On the taxi on my way here, I was sort of like in a fluster because I've been in the kitchens all day, and you guys know what it's like. Been up since silly o'clock cooking for hours and teaching last night, and sort of jumping in the cab on my way here late because I knew Gal would be annoyed with me because I hadn't heard the talk before. And the guy said, well, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to go and do a talk. And he said, all right, what are you talking about? I said, well, what I do. And he said, oh, do you enjoy talking? And I said, well, yeah, I suppose I do actually, because I'm quite passionate. I'm passionate about what I do. So, if I don't know what I'm talking about, then I really shouldn't be what I do every day. And he said, so what do you do? And I thought about it, and I've, my whole, since, starting Honestly Healthy, I've gone from, well, I'm a chef, to I'm a health chef, to I'm a vegetarian chef, to I'm an author. And I really thought about it in the taxi, and I thought, well, what am I? What do I do? And sort of I came to the conclusion of, well, I ask people to be more conscious, and I try to inspire them through delicious food. And that's really what I feel what my essence is. And the reason I started Honestly Healthy was a completely selfish reason, 100% selfish. I needed the structure and the guidance on how to stay healthy in a very balanced way. My whole life I've yo-yoed, and I've done every cleanse, every detox, every diet under the sun. And I felt fantastic, I felt horrendous, I've lost lots of weight, I've put it all back on, and I pretty much know that 80% of my friends have gone through the same thing. And the reason Gal and I first met was because I was running yoga and meditation retreats, and one of the retreats my chef didn't turn up. And I was standing there with all this produce thinking, holy crap, I'm going to have to cook. And I've been brought up in the restaurant business. My father owns restaurants, but French restaurants, so it's heavy, heavy food. And so I was thrown into the kitchens when I was 16, so I'm quite aware of how to cook for people, and I love cooking. But I've never had to cook for 20 people for a whole entire weekend. And I had the best feedback I've ever had from my retreats that weekend. And I thought, okay, well, I can definitely save a couple of £100 here by doing it myself. And so I started doing it myself on the weekends. And then everyone started asking, well, how do we get back in London? Because you're giving us all this advice on how to integrate this into our daily life, but we don't have the time. So I thought, okay, I'll make your food. So, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going to the market, going back to my kitchen with my 4-ring hob, and cooking for about 47 people, then getting into my little Mini with everyone's food and driving around the whole entire London, dropping everyone's lunches off. Realised sort of 6 months later that I wasn't making anything and I was exhausted. Sort of went back and thought, right, how else can I do this? So I started delivering food for 3-4 days to people, and I called it Fridge Fill. And then I went away, and I realised that this is a much easier way, and it was really, really starting to help people become healthy, but in an easy and simple way. And I was really inspiring people by the tasty food that I was making. And so it was the day of my birthday, and I bent down to pick up a pen, and my back went. And I literally couldn't move, and my great friend Jessie had to come and pick me up in my car, and I had to phone up my mum and say, it's Friday afternoon, and I can't get into an osteo, what do I do? She said, go and see my acupuncturist, he'll go stick some needles in and it will completely release your back. I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I'm sort of like hobbled into a taxi, I literally can't move, I sort of roll onto his bed, and he starts putting some needles into my back, and he said, he's absolutely wonderful. He's called Dr. Joshi, and he turned to me and said, darling, you're just so acidic. And I went, excuse me, what do you mean I'm acidic? He said, no wonder you like yo-yo all the time, and you feel bloated, and you're exhausted, and your nails break, and you've got not great skin, and you're yo-yo with your weight all the time. I said, but I'm incredibly healthy. I have green smoothies and I have spirulina and I have all these amazing things. And he said, do you know what? You've just got very expensive wee. And I went, ah, okay. And he said, you need to go on my 21-day detox. And I thought, oh, here we go again. Someone trying to sell me yet another detox to go on. And I thought, he said, no, I promise you, it's not going to be like you've done before. It's going to change your life. And I said, yes, but I know all about nutrition. My godmother's a nutritionist. I've been brought up in this world. My mother's incredibly healthy. And so I said, okay, I'll just give it a go. It's 21 days, you know, I'll just try. Literally, within the first 5 days, I didn't feel like I ever had to cut anything out. And that was the sort of the light bulb in my head. And I sort of did this 21 days, and I felt amazing. And it was very, very slow. I didn't sort of, you know, like all these other, you know, fasts and detoxes and all those things. You don't lose loads and loads of weight within, you know, a week and then suddenly you put it all back on because you realise it's just water. And I slowly started feeling better, and my skin started getting better, and my hair started getting bright. You know, everything was just becoming easier. And I stopped craving chocolate, and I stopped craving all these things that I used to sort of binge on because I used to cut out of my life. And what I realised was that if you do, you know, the 70-30 rule, then 70% of the time you stay alkaline and you're incredibly healthy, and then 30% of the time you can let your hair down. Because we don't all live in a cave in the Himalayas. We want to have a glass of wine occasionally. We want to go and have a chocolate brownie. And, you know, we want to have a bowl of pasta occasionally. And it doesn't have to be a sin, and it doesn't have to be something that you can never do. And I sort of thought to myself, okay, well, I'm going to completely rebrand what I do. And I sort of remember I was staying at my sister's, and I don't know how it came up, but I came up with this name, Honestly Healthy. And I went back to Harrods because they'd already asked me to bring some food in there. And I said, I've completely rebranded everything. It's now alkaline, and it's called Honestly Healthy. And my godmother, who's one of the top nutritionists in the UK, is now the nutritionist of the company. And they're like, okay. We then had to go through the whole process of, you know, trying to get it into Harrods and learning about health and safety, which was the bane of my life. And then, you know, literally overnight, Selfridges and also Harvey Nichols started asking us to launch with them as well. And we had to sort of make a decision who we were going to launch with within the 24 hours. And we decided to go with Selfridges. And out of that, then I was offered this book deal, and also asked to consult for hotels in Mauritius and the Maldives. And it's just started spiraling, and it was amazing, and it's been a really long, hard trek. But one of the main things for me that I teach in my classes, my cooking classes, and in the book as well, is a concept called upgrading. And one of the things that I found so hard when I was trying to be healthy, so to speak, was having to cut things out of your diet. And that's what I couldn't get my head around, because I basically would then be working on willpower, and willpower is unsustainable. So then you're going to break 100%, and you're probably going to just binge after it. I mean, I remember doing a 7-day fast and having a pizza at the end of it. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But, you know, I was craving so much. And so one of the things that I talk about is this upgrading, and it's making small little changes in your food, in your daily life, that doesn't have a massive impact to start with. But then, so say if you're a white bread eater, you then would go to, you know, spelt, and then you go to go to an actual gluten-free bread, and then eventually getting to raw sprouted bread. But there's such small little changes that you don't really notice it, that you don't feel like you're having to work on willpower. And that's the one thing that's just unsustainable. And you'll start to feel the difference. You'll start to feel amazing. You'll start to feel like, you know, you're bouncing on air. Yes, you're exhausted because you might be working incredibly hard, but that getting up in the morning is just so much easier. And creating all these recipes for people throughout the book has been something that has been such an inspiration to me, because you know, I get feedback and people write on our Facebook page and Twitter and stuff, and I did this competition last week and asked everyone to send photographs in of the recipes they've been making. And it's just showing me how easy it is, and I've created this I suppose, index for people to just dip in and out of to make life easier for them, but also so that they can feel better and be more healthy. My question to everyone is, if you know you can feel amazing, what are you going to do to make yourself feel that good? Thank you.